Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm just checking if it's recording. And in today's video, we gonna talk about ecstasy. So, not about MDMA. So, keep your pills wherever they are, but about the archetype of ecstasy. So, why do we need to know, or why do we need to talk at all about this archetype? In ancient times, ecstasy was considered the favor of gods. It was thought as transformative fire of ecstasy could bring the mortals out of the daily life, and through this transformative experience we can discover the parts of ourselves which were lost. Today, in the contemporary society, we have lost this contact with the transformative fire of ecstasy and joy. In Greek myth, however, it is represented by a Dionysus, the Greek god of ecstasy and wine. So, our materialistic society teaches us that the only valuable thing, this is the thing we can put into the bank. So, we do not value other sensuous things. And maybe that's why the exploration of another cultures, such as Indian, for example, or American indigenous cultures, is so interesting, because these cultures, they never actually lost this contact with archetype of ecstasy. On the negative side of this is our craving, and we trying to fulfill the emptiness on the inside, and we are chasing some material things or some forms of pleasure in form of, again, shopping, drugs, whatever things. But the thing is, with craving, it gives us the short-term happiness, which is transitionary, and in the end it turns into the chronic unease, and we are chasing it constantly, and we are not able to fulfill this emptiness within. So addiction to anything is the negative syndrome, let's say, of spiritual seeking. So for this reason, we want to understand what is the nature of ecstasy and what is the nature of joy. So in the Greek culture, it is represented in the form of god Dionysus, which was the god of ecstasy, wine, and joy. And rise and fall of his cult, reviewing the rise and fall of his cult will give us the ability to see and understand how we have lost the contact with ecstasy ourselves. In Vedic culture, this archetype is represented by Krishna, the adventurous god, and also partly by Shiva, who has one form which is called Nataraja, which translated as king of dance. So, myth about the Dionysus, joy or madness. Dionysus is a personification of divine ecstasy. Dionysus, the capricious god, the thrill of joy which can lift us up or bring madness or physical addiction. Dionysus was born 3 times. One time from his mortal mother, another time from the thigh of his immortal father, and third time from the earth itself. So the father of Dionysus was the Zeus, the top god of the Greek pantheon, and the translation of the name of Zeus is the shower of light. So Zeus, in many myths, he was traveling the earth and heaven and enjoying the intimate affairs with heavenly and with mortal women. And when he was traveling the earth, he was also wearing a disguise, so no one, and especially his wife Hera, could not recognize him. Sounds familiar, right? He fell in love with one earthly woman, which was named as Semele. And soon after they met, they had a child. And this child was Dionysus. So, because Zeus was terribly in love with Semele, he granted her a boon. She vowed on the river Styx that she may ask whatever she wants. So this one important moment about the vows, we can also find this in Hindu Puranic myths, in Mahabharata, for example, or in Ramayana, where from this vow which king is giving, all troubles are arising. So one point of this, that our words have certain power, and just be careful with them, or in another way we can say that the words is your tools or your weapon, so you have to have like right tools at your disposal. From the branding, we know that your brand is whatever you say, right? So Zeus had given this unbreakable vow to Semele, and then Hera, in disguise, she approached Semele as a servant, as her maiden, and she urged her to ask her lover to show his true face. And from ignorance, she asked Zeus to do this. He was enraged, and he told her choose something else, but she was stubborn. She wanted to see him, and eventually he couldn't resist, and he showed himself, and Semele was immediately annihilated on the spot. So shower of light, from there the name comes from, and the meaning that mortals, they could not bear the image of God. So it always should be some transitionary stage. Yes, from Bible and from other stories we know that God, when he was speaking with the prophets, he was in form of a fire, tree, angel, or whatever. So we cannot withstand the true image of let's say the universe or reality. It is unbearable for us to comprehend. This is one message from the story. So Zeus was furious, and so Semele was annihilated, and only the womb remained, because it was covered by ivy. Also the ivy or ivy, the tree, the symbol of Dionysus. So Zeus removed this ivy, and he plucked the womb and made an incision, the cut, in his thigh, in his leg, and he put the fetus inside his thigh. And eventually, at some point, he gave birth to Dionysus. But the Titans, the raw and primordial forces which existed before the Olympian gods, they also were anxious because some new force was born. And they didn't know what to do with it, so they decided to tear it in pieces and boiled for a good sake, for a good measure. This is how he died the second time, but on the spot where his blood has fallen, the pomegranate tree had grown, the symbol of fertility. And from there, the Rhea is his grandmother, and she is the daughter of Gaia, of the earth. So the Rhea, she is the mother of Zeus and grandmother of Dionysus. From this tree, pomegranate tree, Rhea again resurrected the Dionysus, and she gave him new life and wholeness. But Hera, the wife of Zeus, she was also enraged, and she was looking for this child. So Zeus told to raise him as a girl, and he was raised as a girl by a sister of Semele and his husband Ino. But Hera wasn't so let's say the trick didn't work out, and eventually Zeus told to transform the Dionysus into the young goat, and to escort him to the Mount Nysa, where he was grown by nymphs, the joyous spirits of the forest. So they fed him honey, and he was roaming the land, the earth, and exploring all the pleasures and the joy of the natural and earthy life. So he enjoyed the pleasures of the earthy life, and he invented the art of winemaking, and he understand it completely with all these positive and negative thing that it would bring to the humanity. So then Dionysus revealed himself. This was exactly what Hera was waiting, and she cursed him with madness. And still he was young and powerful god, and he went traveling as he was mad, and he was sharing his art of wine and winemaking, and gathering the worshippers of him. So his cult spread across the all Greece and all Europe eventually at some point. We can also find here another parallel with Shiva, because Shiva is also traveling with the strange, let's say, company, the company of outcasts, the outcast who normal society does not accept. And the company of Dionysus was a drunkard Selene, the grinning satyrs, the nymphs, the centaurs, and from the human followers he had the Menads. Menads were women from the mountains who knew the female mysteries, and who gathered in the mountains for raving, dancing, singing, and Dionysus was their god. As the story goes, we can see that politicians did not like him. Because from their view he was the opposition of the law and order. So the king Lycurgus was fighting was fighting him violently, and he captured the god's army, and Dionysus went underneath the ocean with the ocean nymph Thetis. And we can also see the parallel here in our culture, where in many cultures the raves are illegal because they seen as something as antithesis for law and order. And especially we can see this in the countries where the form of government is some kind of authoritarian theocracy, or like any form of tyranny, right? So all these gatherings, let's say, they always go underground. But Rhea, the grandmother of Dionysus, struck the Lycurgus with madness, and he killed his own son, believing that he was a grapevine. And then Dionysus emerged triumphantly from the sea and announced that the Thrace, this is the country where this king Lycurgus ruled. So he announced that Thrace will not prosper until this king is alive. So people immediately gathered, and he brought the horses and tied his arms and legs and torn him apart. So this is how the story with the politician ends. So his cult spread across the Greece and across the Europe, and eventually even until the Mount Olympus, where the Hestia, who was in the primordial goddess of hearth. Hearth is the home, and this home warmth, right? Heart. She stepped down, and she freed the place for Dionysus, and Dionysus sat on the Mount Olympus at the right hand of his father Zeus. So he was officially the god, but he wasn't completely happy because he never saw his mother. So he made the heroic descendant into the underworld, and he rescued his mother, and she also became immortal and known as Phrone, and from Greek it means ecstasy. So here the myth ends, and in the Europe, the place of Dionysus is taken paradoxically by Jesus, but Christianity did not treat him better as the Greek politicians and as well as Roman politicians, as we will see later. So what is ecstasy? We can see that Dionysus is the most important. He is the last god added to the Greek pantheon, and he is the most important one and most misunderstood. Dionysus embodies the continuous, unpredictable changes and transmutations of nature. So he was born from fire, torn apart, and he is always reborn. So he is always reborn, and this may sound familiar to you to another figure. So he represents the continual rebirth of the spring and wisdom of the senses, and exaltation of a spirit. So our Western civilization does not share the thought seeing is believing. Our world is built upon thinking, logic, and rational process. And within these limits, we feel secure. But even science tells us that these limits are very, very illusory. So we completely forget about spontaneous and guilt-free experience. So when last time did you sing with full depths of your lungs? When last time did you shout on your full level? When last time did you dance fully expressing your body, the range of your motion? So this kind of experiences, spontaneous, guilt-free joy, embodies the Dionysus. But we also can see that he can bring both elevation of the spirit and ecstasy and the madness. So that's why we are so afraid of this. And the real the realm of Dionysus is the sensuous world, the realm of artists, poets. But do not confuse sensuous world with materialistic pleasures. It is more, as been said, the artistic dimension where we can receive the joy by contemplating or creating something ourselves. So Sufi, for example, call music Giza Eruch, that means food for the soul. So this kind of things is the realm of Dionysus. So also Dionysian Experience, this sentence create confusion, because when you say Dionysian Experience, what would you think? Or Ecstatic Experience, or ecstasy, exaltation of the soul, or you would think a wild, a drunken orgy. And in fact, orgy in ancient Greek formulation was translated as the sacred worship of god Dionysus. This was the original meaning. Then irrational. The word irrational itself also creates, I think, only negative impression in our mind, because again our whole civilization, which is coming from Greek philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle, is praises logos, which is thinking and rational side of the mind, let's say. So for this we also need to figure out what actually irrational is. So we describe the Dionysian world as irrational, and if we say some person is irrational, we usually mean that this person is offbeat and insane, right? But we all are emotional creatures, and if we remove emotions from our life, we will be rigid like automatons. And yes, we can achieve some progress by following only a discipline, but at the end our life will be dry and deprived of any meaning. So we need to understand that all emotional is not always bad. For example, there are two types of thinking, masculine thinking and feminine thinking. And this comes from Robert Greene, from his book The Laws of Human Nature. I highly recommend. So masculine types of thinking is focusing on the separation of the phenomena. So it cuts things apart and tear it piece by piece and try to analyze them and digging deeper into the nature of the things. Masculine type of thinking likes to analyze and build structure, be it a book or a business. Then feminine type of thinking is a type of thinking that focuses on the phenomenon as a whole. So it likes to understand whole gestalt, and instead of separating the phenomena in time, it likes to focus on the whole organic process. And it likes to analyze the patterns to see how they operate, and she absorbs the patterns and lets the answer to come in a due time. So if it is need to be cooked, so it likes to meditate upon the solution, absorb all the patterns, and the connections are revealed between the phenomenons are revealed in a due time. In fact, all Eastern philosophy is built on the feminine type of thinking, be it Vedic or Taoism, because it focuses on the whole picture. And Buddha, thousands years ago, before the quantum physics, was saying that phenomenon in itself, it doesn't have any meaning. So everything is like nothing. Everything is at the end, what quantum physics tells us, at the end there is a void, there is nothing. So the phenomenon separated from other phenomenons doesn't have any sense, any meaning. It only has the meaning with the connection to the other phenomenons. So we calling this postmodernism now, when the things are only make sense in the context. So this is the feminine type of thinking. But the Western culture praises the masculine types of thinking with logic, analysis, but even our most prominent scientists, they actually showed the mix of both. So, irrational knowledge. They tend to think that knowledge can be only rational, but original meaning of irrational knowledge was simply the knowledge which gathered through senses. And Dionysian way of knowledge is the knowledge from intuition and senses. In classical Greek thought, there are two types of knowledge. The first one is logos, and the second one is aistasis. So logos is reasoning, argument, abstraction, calculation, and aistasis is direct perception. This is light, sight, sound, smell, intuition. And the word aistasis is the root for the modern word aesthetics, which is translated as that which is known through senses. Reason analyzes, and irrational knowledge reveals. We have knowledge of the body, we have knowledge of image and symbol. When you see somebody's face, you do not analyze it, you recognize it. We have knowledge of sound and rhythm, which you feel. we have knowledge of atmosphere, right? So we talk about atmosphere in a certain place, or we can talk about a certain person in terms of atmosphere which this person creates, right? So this is the irrational knowledge, is knowledge of recognition and not deduction. So in Jungian psychology, there are in Jungian psychology there are 4 types of recognition. So thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. And from these 4, only one can be what we call rational. All other 3 are irrational, actually. And what is interesting, that different people have different function which is main. So let's say you can be a thinking type or feeling type or intuitive type, right? So only one of them is dominant, which is like shape your whole perception of the world. In Vedic thought, there are also 2 types of knowledge, and one is Vidya and another one is Prajna. So Vidya is coming from root vid, which means to know and to see. So this is knowledge of form, and the Vedas themselves called Vidya. So when you study grammar, music, language, this is called Vidya. And Prajna is coming from knowledge of direct insight. It's coming from root verbs pra, which is before and beyond, and jna. Jna means to know. So it's not accumulated, it awakens to you. So you do not learn prajna the same way as you learn geometry. It awakens to you when your mind becomes clear. So one builds the map and another one allows you to see the landscape. Then you study ragas, archetypes. This is Vidya. But then the archetypes start to talking to you, or when you create a piece of music from the inspiration, this is prajna. So in the West, we usually associate ecstasy with X-rated movies, but the literal meaning of the words ecstasis is meaning to stand outside oneself, But in these days, we rarely stand outside oneself. So what does it mean? It means that I simply feel the emotion so powerful that I cannot contain it. I am outside myself. But that's why it's called transcendent experience, right? But we, in these days, we are so focused on doing things, planning, rushing, analyzing, thinking, that there is no time for such experience. So we simply need a place where we are not going anywhere, you know, and a place where we can relieve this burden of responsibility, timeless spaciousness, and we have such practice now. Practice, I don't know, we can call it practice or experience or whatever, such as ecstatic dance, right? Which emerged also like recently, where um, we can switch the attention from the thinking, analyzing mind to our body and just enjoy ourselves. So there is no goal to achieve, right? What is dance eventually, and what is music? Dance and music, they don't have any goal. It just is, you know. It's just a flow with no goal, with no tasks, you know. That is it. Another interesting thing is actually the definition, English definition of the words joy and happiness. So happiness is a happening of chance, luck, and fortune, and joy is exaltation of spirit, gladness, delight, the beatitude of heaven and paradise. So ask yourself, what do you want? Happiness, this is a chance of luck, or you want a joy, which is a beatitude of paradise. So the one is short-lived and creating a chronic unease, and another one is transcendental. So how did we lose the Dionysus? Psychologically, his story is a triumph of rationality over irrationality, triumph of thinking over feeling, triumph of concrete masculine ideas of power, aggression, progress over feminine ideals, which are not so tangible, like nurturing, growth, receptivity. So it's a triumph over patriarchal religions over matriarchal religions. In the Greece, the celebration of the Dionysus resurrection was a spring festival like no other. So it was celebration of spring, of rebirth, and even the prisoners were released from the prisons for 5 days. So, and they did not celebrate it only in the temple, but also the celebrations of Dionysus gave birth to a theater. So joyous celebration of his resurrection gave birth to comedy, and tragodia, the singing over sacrifice of symbolic god, tragodia, the singing over sacrifice of symbolic god, gave birth to tragedy. And outside the city, the Menads were raving. All the females were raving in the mountains. Nobody knows what they're doing. His cult was spreading across the Europe until the 6th century before Common Era. But then the patriarchal religions gained power. This cult was started to be repressed, and it was madness like in Salem in the America. So many innocent people were killed. So all patriarchal religions, such as Romans, who succeeded the Greeks, and then the Christians, and then the Jews, they didn't like the irrational and intoxicant qualities of Dionysus. So then the Romans get hold of capricious qualities of Dionysus. They turned him from the god of so they perverted him from the god of wine into the god of drunkenness, and named him Bacchus at approximately 186 year of Common Era. And this is actually, I think, the very important point in the Western civilization, because if you think about this, our culture is mostly alcohol culture. And we choose the path, ironically, instead of healing, we choose the path of drunkenness. So we repressed the god of ecstasy and created the perverted god Bacchus, and instead of divine exaltation of the spirit, because the thing is, the Dionysian worship, it was never meant to be drunk. They make a sip of a wine, and they're thinking that they took the god inside, and they need to stay aware, conscious, to chase, to not allow the evil spirit, like to do whatever the evil spirit do. So all in all, it was never meant to be drunk. It was only one sip, and it was meant as sacred, as consuming of the sacred body of the god. But anyway, at the same time, the Romans, they elevated the Apollo, the god of sun, of rational thinking. And at the old days, the Dionysus and Apollo were honored equally at Delphi, but at one point the Romans, they elevated the Apollo. So the god from this moment was officially high in the sky, and the earthy qualities represented by Dionysus were not honored anymore. So the Jews and Christians, they treated the god no better, and they even turned his face into the face of the devil. And for us in the West, it may be difficult to discuss the devil, but this is maybe represented as the path of evolution of our psyche. Because maybe to elevate one of our parts, our rational part, we needed to repress our irrational part until it doesn't go, completely off hands. So by doing so, we achieved the progress in science and whatever we call progress. But even this, what we call progress, is also, we need to carefully actually establish what is it, what actually do we call progress. Yes, we have the progress in science and so on, but eventually, like where we are going, we are extracting treating the earth as an object. We extracting all of the resources, we killing everything, destroying ecosystems all around us, and eventually, as even the scientists are telling us about the climate change, we are digging our own grave, if we not change something. So what we call progress. In my opinion, what we can call progress is that we are only approaching now. We can grasp it, like with the discovery of renewable energy, we can start building the systems not upon the extraction, but upon the circulation. But I don't know if we can achieve it. So anyhow, maybe to achieve this progress, we needed to repress our irrational qualities to elevate our rational qualities. But if we also think about the Vedas or the Taoism, in the Eastern view, there are no such things as good things or bad things. There are just things, So, yeah, this is it. Now, Dionysus lives in strange places in our culture. The terrorist attacks, arson fires, school shootings, political assassinations, where we hear the noise when two cars are clashing, we say like, oh, awful, and we run to watch the scene. So this was what happens then. The archetype was not living for thousands of years. Lycurgus, the Greek king, he fought the archetype because he didn't recognize it as an archetype, right? But archetype, as we see from the story, cannot be killed. You cannot kill a god who, by definition, is immortal. Dionysus goes under the sea, so you can put it only into the unconsciousness, right? So by repressing this, we put it into the unconsciousness, and when we do this, as the myth tells us, it erupts as a madness. This is expressed by Carl Jung in his essay Wotan, where he foresaw the gigantic catastrophe as World War II. So the Wotan is god of storm, frenzy, wandering, war, poetry, possession, and ecstatic rage. So what Jung was saying, that beneath the civilized modern German society, beneath this society was living this archetype, this ancient god Wotan. So instead of appearing as ecstasy, poetry, or trance, it erupted into collective rallies, hypnosis, and you know what happened next. There happened World War II. So what the Jung was saying in this essay, that this event was not merely geopolitical event, but a psychic catastrophe. Without a proper channel, such as ritual, it erupted as a collective destruction. And what we can see now, I'm recording this video in 2026. Now we have the same in the war between Ukraine and Russia. This is the biggest conflict from the World War II, and recording this video, Russia hit 1 million losses. So it's the biggest conflict on the continent, and it's the biggest conflict since the World War II. So when our society had followed the footsteps of degraded Bacchus instead of joyful dance of Dionysus, we became confusing materialism and sensations. And as a result, we are citizens of 21st century. We have lost the contact with our senses. Even our clothes is aimed for success. We separate our head with our, thighs. We separate our head and our body, sensations and feeling. So when we remove our thighs after the working day, we like to go wild. And at first, our society is terribly sensuous oriented, like flashing neon signs, advertisements, like where sex appearing everywhere. But eventually we are losing and mixing the quality and quantity, and at the end never get what we want. We chasing for more, and this brings addiction. So this is like a low grade Dionysian experience. We also afraid of our emotions, right? We do not hug a stranger because nice people don't do that, and we are most likely to take stranger into the bed when opening emotionally with a person who is our friend or partner or whatsoever. What we afraid most, I think, in this experience is the process of surrender, even to the divine. We afraid to lose the control and to enter the realm of gods where nothing is explained. Also, we had few experiments such as hippie and psychedelic revolution, which very fast degraded from the Woodstock to the shootings. So this also creates maybe sense of fear, but eventually the point is that we don't need to choose between rational and irrational. We need both, actually, and this is our burden as human beings, because being dispelled from the paradise, the cherubim with the flaming sword is guarding our way back. So that means that we need to create our own paradise. And to create it, this is the door of Dionysian experience which invites us there. So strangely as it is, but Jesus had become the chief enemy of cult of Dionysus, but actually if we trace both myths accordingly, we can find many similarities. Christianity had become very dry and sterile, and we don't have in our culture celebration of ecstasy. And if we do not if we don't have the dark night of the soul, if we cannot accept this our parts of ourselves, the consequences may be and already are terrible. And what we have now is neurosis, and neurosis is actually like a low-grade religious experience. But if we trace the communion, Christian communion, the inner meaning of this ritual, not the outer structure, we can find actually many similarities to Dionysus. So betrayal, murder, crucifixion, the god became wine. So the followers of Dionysus, they also drank their god as a wine, and have eaten his flesh in form of a god. And the Christ was twice born, and Dionysus was thrice born, and both were born from mortal mother and divine father. And both Simel and Virgin Mary, they both ascended to heaven. And Antioch Chalice mentions the Christ engaging in favorite Dionysian activity, like swinging on the grapevines. So this is symbolically means transitioning between the two worlds. So both the Dionysus and Christ were hailed as kings of kings, king of kings. Both were not believed when they were claimed that they were sons of a god. Both die and reborn, and which symbolize that life does not end, and both were seated at the right hand of their father. So the Christ was the god of love, ecstasy, and visionary god. Carl Jung observed that our principal mandala, the cross, is distorted. So the parts of the cross represents rational and irrational, and we value one thing more than another, and because of this we have to overcompensate for this imbalance. So as been said, the Greeks, they valued both Apollo and Dionysus equally. So Jesus was the spirit and matter, but we don't like to think this way. And the same unity of opposites of spirit and matter we can find in the Vedic culture, in Tantra, where Shiva and Shakti united, so the consciousness and energy, the masculine and feminine principle are united. So the Christ was the god of love, but we only took what always amused me in a way, that we took only suffering from his story, and we think if we suffer good enough, we can be as good as him. And another thing which I did not mention, that turning water into wine, this was of course the thing which Dionysus was doing on the daily basis. Dionysus is called a divine androgyn, and in the West we have a certain stereotype about the male's sexuality. We have Apollo, which is god of bronze muscles, and we feel insecure about the Dionysian ambiguity. We remember that he was raised as a girl and he was raised by nymphs. But also, what is actually meant here, that psychologically we are all androgynous. We have masculine traits and feminine traits, and this is represented in many myths, and in the Vedic and Hindu Puranic as well. For example, Vishnu, it's highest deity in Hinduism, which represents the being itself. The Vishnu, in the moment of crisis, he takes the form of the most sexiest woman, and he is the male god, but when he needs, he uses the female's qualities, such as sexuality, seduction. Then Shiva, who is another highest deity, also has his androgynous form. So psychologically, this means that we are not the rigid characters defined by the social structures. There is much more to it. So it's not like we separate our head and feelings, and it's not like we assign certain qualities to men and certain qualities like logic for men and intuition for women. No, we both have access to these qualities. So, but because women, they naturally more prone to intuition. For this reason, they maybe like the Dionysus more, because the last followers of Dionysus were the Menads, who were last followers of the cult of great goddess. So the Menads, they were initiated to the mysteries by Rhea, and they gathered outside the cities in the mountains and were raving, and nobody knew what they were actually doing. So the great goddess. Eventually we also can see that cult of Dionysus was the transformation of this cult of great goddess, and eventually it disappeared with dominance of patriarchal religions. So through the myths we also can see this history, because initially across all cultures and myths. This was the goddess who was worshipped, and eventually it was shifted with male gods. So in Greek mythology we can see as Gaia, the Earth Mother, was abused by Uranus, the sky, and later her son Kronos escaped, so his father Uranus would not swallow him, and in the same way the Zeus escaped from Kronos and eventually slayed him, but the mother Gaia, she remained distant but respectful. So what we can see here, transition from emotional to the rational world. Also, in the mythological stories all around the world, we can see how the males are competing for female prize. So, and the same thing in nature. The bird is choosing the partner with the best feathers, and in stories from all around the world, the men have to compete for a woman because every womb is precious, but not every sperm is. The selection of only good or the best males create a certain anxiety among the other males, which in turn creates the social structures such as marriage, which are often created with no equal rights, and especially who is suffering, these are the women. In Bronze Age, we actually see quite different story because the advances of the women, they cannot be rejected. So in Mahabharata we see then Arjuna, the main character, rejects the advances of Urvashi. She curses him and turning him into a eunuch. Also, there was a tradition that so the women were choosing a man, actually, not vice versa, and the man couldn't reject it. And another thing existed that so the dominant male, they would not have the access to all the female. This dominant male, which women have chosen, it must be ritually killed at a certain time, so he will not stay in this position of power. So the only way to escape this cycle of competition altogether, this was to become a eunuch. So that also created a certain anxiety among the men. Another association with women is the... So we are speaking about the... I'm telling the stories, we are speaking about the goddess, the great goddess, and the transition from matriarchal religion to patriarchal, and how this happened. So we are exploring and investigating our psychological, let's say, evolution or transition. Another association with women amongst men, this is death, because pleasure, it's connected through the sex, pleasure, and death, it's connected. And symbolically in Jyotish astrology, it the house of death, which is 8th house, also represents sex. And another myth, this is story of Yama and Yami, his sister. So they were the first beings, Yama and Yami, and Yami was sister of Yama, and she advanced him, but Yama rejected the advances of her sister on the moral ground, and eventually, because he didn't have and he didn't produce any offsprings, he found himself trapped in the realm of death. So we see here the connection of sex and death, and also the outcome of the rejection of the sex. So this anxiety and fear of women created many things among men, either to control women or to things to control women, such as social structures, or things to avoid them, such as celibacy and the monastic orders. So in Bible, the Samson loses his powers when he succumbs to the charms of Delilah, and after turning his attention to God, he gains his power again. In Buddhism, we also find that Buddha, then he rejects the daughters of Mara, such as desires, disease, and death. He becomes the enlightened one. In yoga, we also have that we have the notions that the semen produce the offspring but weakens the father, and turning the semen upwards can bring the magical powers. So from there, all the rituals of celibacy and monastic orders were born to escaping the nature altogether. Another form of control was the social, because eventually at all cultures the men gained the control over the economical activities, and the women become a high value commodity with high demand and low supply. So the women had no choice like trade their bodies for a pleasure. And the term prostitute was given to a woman, such a woman, because only rich people could afford the most beautiful woman. And eventually the same term was given to any woman who freely choose her lover. So at the end, that brought to the situation, brought the outcome where the woman was denied the ownership of her body, and she belonged to the husband, brother, father, son, any man, but not to herself. But in the old days, Mahabharata tells us stories when a woman can have up to 4 husbands. Unimaginable thing today. And initially also the terms the war and virgin were quite different. So the war was simply meant a woman who freely chose her lover, and a virgin was a woman who were ready to bear a child. And initially these terms were quite neutral, but with the rise of patriarchal religions and with anxieties among the men, the one term was elevated upon the another. Another anxiety, as being told, is among the men, is that of being cuckolded by another man, meaning to raise the offsprings of more dominant men, which is actually represented in the myth of Zeus, because he is cheating the mortal kings and having affairs with their wives, actually. And all this anxiety creates the fear and different forms of control. So, but we need to understand also the phenomenon of aggressor trap. So the more power he has, the more vulnerabilities he actually has. So the only way he has is actually to control and repress even more, and to expand his, let's say, domination. So where can we see it right now? Of course, in modern Iran, where men are afraid of the women so much that then the woman takes off her hijab, they shoot them with the machine gun. So this is anxiety created, what anxiety among men creates. And in Christian culture, we have like the same things, like the witch hunt, and different data estimates from 40,000 to 4 million women were killed during the Counter-Reformation in Europe. So this is the male anxiety towards the women. In Chinese mythology, we have Yin and Yang, two polarities, two aspects of life, and both are equally important. So the Yang is the dragon in the sky, the Yin is the phoenix in the earth who is always reborn. Both are equally important, but Confucianism elevated the Yang aspect. The emperor was granted with mandate from the heaven with the mission to rule and domesticate the earth. Eventually, it brought China to communism, which we know today, and where Taoist temples were destroyed all among the country. In Hindu tradition, we can see that Devi, the goddess, is the divinity in her own right. She responds to the gaze of Brahma, who wants to control her, to Vishnu, who enjoys her, and to Shiva, who withdraws from her. She allows them to dominate, but not to dominate over her. She creates the space to everyone to outgrow the anxiety created by patriarchy. When cities are more developed and the life of humanity shifts toward the cities, the gaze of humanity is turned from the earth up to the sky, because the earth is seen as burden, and the relief is seen somewhere up in the skies. Before, the world was seen in the feminine terms as the great goddess Gauri, Kali, Ishtar. But the more cities were developed, the more gravity of the earth was seen as a burden, as escape was seen far above in the sky. So the messengers of the goddess, the serpents, were turned into the form of the devil, and the gratitude and the escape, the holiness, was seen far above in the skies. Also, the women were seen as a dangerous force because they value desires more than rules. In biblical stories, we see the serpent, the messenger of the goddess, was made the devil because he disobeys and tempts others to disobey. God, who makes the rules, resides in the sky, and this also brought to elevating the male prophets and diminishing the female prophets such as Miriam, Deborah, and Anna. In Islam, we have the folk traditions where the devil tried to include through the Muhammad three goddesses of Mecca into the Quran, which were Urs, Manat, and Lat. So to make them mediums to Allah. And these are called infamously the satanic verses, but still we can find the feminine present in the form of hand of Fatma in Islam. In the old days, the Jews valued Dionysus and Jehovah equally. We can find this in the old coins found in Gaza, because one side of the coin represents the Dionysus and another one Jehovah. But at some point, maybe because the Jews had so much of this irrationality, they also desired to create the patriarchal society, and they repressed one of these qualities. But the thing is that Jews have so much of this spontaneity that their culture had never lost it. But we, as followers of this religion, eventually we repressed these qualities completely. Another Jewish tradition is that they put all the negative qualities to the god and expelled it and released it into the wild. So the goat beard and all the negative qualities of the community and taken it away. In Christianity, we choose another symbol, the sheep, which is very nice and which is eternal victim. So we expelled all the qualities of the god and turned it into the devil. The Dionysus, the black skin, is how the devil was portrayed in the Middle Age. But the scapegoats have the ability to return. Dionysus is also the representation, the ecstatic principle of the growth of organic life itself. There is one story in the myth. Some pirates who were wandering across the coast of the Greece, they saw a young, handsome man sitting on the beach, and they were thinking that it must be some noble man, and they captured him for ransom. But they didn't understand that they captured a god. And only one person did on the ship, who was a helmsman, and he begged others to release him. They didn't listen to him, and eventually something terrible happened. So the drops of wine, the rain, like bloody rain, started to dropping onto the ship, and the grapevines started to rising from the bottom of the ocean and started to capturing the people on the boat. And Dionysus, they also like tied him with the knots, and he turned himself into the lion, and eventually destroyed everyone, and only the helmsman was spared. So what they tried to do in the story, they tried to bound the principle of the organic life of the growth itself. And this story again turns us into the cult of the goddess, mother, great mother. In Jyotish astrology, this is symbolically represented by a fourth house. So this is the heart, the home, the mother, the nurturing qualities of the woman. And in the old societies, they valued the mother, but the role of the father was barely understood. So the mother who cooks and keeps the house, she sustains life. And eventually these values were changed for more aggressive and masculine ones. But what we need to understand now that it's not, we don't need to divide them. The man can enjoy the sensuous life, such as women can enjoy intellectual life. So Dionysus continued to sail after he captured this ship of the pirates, and he sees one beautiful woman who was left alone on some island, and her name was Ariadne. So he takes this woman as his wife, and as the story goes, they lived happily, and they were the only one couple from the Greek pantheon who never quarreled. So what does it mean? Dionysus, again, represents the divine androgyne like Shiva and Vishnu. And what is this in our inner world. So this is the realm of anima and animus, which was described by Carl Jung. And every human being has to discover his inner feminine, if it is man, or inner masculine, if it is woman. And this, of course, is the realm of irrational, because this is the realm of psyche. And but at the end, it brings and gives us a wholeness. So from the ego personality, we shift towards the self, towards wholeness. Another thing I forgot to tell, that also in Hindu pantheon, another character which we can find embodies the same archetype is Krishna. Because if you remember Menads, who had their ecstatic experience, the women who had their ecstatic experience in the mountains, in Puranas, we can also find almost the same story about the Krishna. He was raised as a cowherd in Vrindavan, and he was playing the flute. And when he did play his flute, the gopis were the milkmaids, the simple ordinary women from the villages. So they dropped everything, so their duties and even their social roles, and they urged to the forest in the middle of the night to hear his flute and to dance with him, because as the story goes, the Krishna was dancing at the same time with every woman, and this was called the Rasa Lila, the divine play. And to finalize this story, how we can find the Dionysus or Krishna, how we can connect with this archetype, and how we can touch this archetype. We can do it in the three main ways. This is active imagination, dream work, and ritual. So I would not be describing active imagination and especially the dream work, because they are the active imagination is not so difficult, but the dream work is a very complex subject where nobody agrees upon. So you can explore them on your own, but the most profound way and the channel for this is ritual, which as contemporary Western society we are lacking very deeply. So what is ritual? Ritual is not mean to do magic to dominate or control someone. Ritual is to make concrete what you have done through your inner work. What does it mean? It means like you are manifesting your psychic reality into your material reality, and it can be done in many forms. So you can create your own ritual, and there is a very touching Jewish story when community were in distress, because as you know, like the Jewish people were like roamed all around the world because they didn't have their own country. And actually this story most likely is coming from Ukraine, from the Hasidic movement, Hasidic Judaism in Ukraine. And when the community was in danger, Ravi knew the ritual. So they need to go to a particular tree in particular forest and say particular words and to do a particular things. And the magic has happened. Then times had passed with more harder events happened, and all the community was scattered all around the world, and many things were forgotten. So they knew that the next rabbi knew in next generation that they need to go to a forest and to do certain things, but he didn't know to which tree they need to go. So they went, and the magic still happened. Then more harder times had come, and even more things were forgotten. So they only knew that they need to go to the forest and to do something. And they did as the best as they could, and it worked out. And then another generation forgot everything, and they just went into the forest and made up the ritual, and still the magic has happened, and the community were saved. So the point of the story is whatever you do with your consciousness and with your awareness, wherever you bring your energy into this is it will work. So you can make up your own ritual. And again, where can we find it? In the world of art. Through the glimpse of art, we can, for contemplating of the piece of art or listening to music, we can have the glimpse of it. But creating ourselves, we actually transitioning more into the realm of Dionysus. So any form of art can be seen as ritual. And in fact, art was separated from other human activities very recently. And every human being must have this opportunity. Every human being cannot be deprived of this opportunity to express himself or herself. Every human being has the ability, we just don't need to forget about this, to dance, to sing, to draw, to move, any form of expression or all of them. Just allow yourself and don't judge the result. There is no gold. There is there is a gold, but there is no goal, only a flow. Thanks for watching. Namaste.